Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten Mason. I'm a postgraduate intern in the Office of Experiential Learning and Career Development at Mount Allison University. I'm going to be running you through a quick guide of what an academic CV is, how they're different than resumes and cover letters, the structure of them and what to include, why they're important, etc. So there's some pretty big key differences between a resume and an academic CV that might not be clear right away. The first one being the academic CVs are targeted at scholars and or scholarly institutions rather than an employer. So the focus is to highlight everything related to academics. Next, there is no maximum length. So your CV will continue to grow as you gain experience, but this doesn't mean removing previous experience. It just means that your CV will get longer as you get more experience, more education, unlike a resume that has a two-page limit. Next, you have the opportunity to express personal research and or teaching interests, and that's because the school will ask you what subjects you'd like to teach if you were offered a TA-ship, a teaching assistantship, or a research assistantship. So this is a good opportunity to put personal interests in a concise, clear way that you normally can't do on a resume. And then finally, your academic CV will have different requirements or components depending on your level of education. So for example, a Bachelor of Arts applying for a master's degree will have different requirements than a master's degree level student applying for a PhD. On top of that, different disciplines and different schools are going to have different requirements too. So it's important to look into all of that before you start your CV. So next is a really important section. It's the components of an academic CV. As I said, they will depend on what you're applying for, what education you've completed, and all that kind of stuff. But this is a pretty basic guideline of what's in most academic CVs. So first is going to be your personal information, education. Those are in a resume anyway. Next, you're going to have teaching experience, interests, research experience, and interests, professional experience, additional work experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these are all kind of things that might have been in your resume, but maybe not. You might not have had a section for it or knew how to describe it, or didn't know that you could include it. So this is your section to expand on that, and we're going to break those down next. So the first section being personal information is the easiest one. You're going to include your name, your address, your phone number, and your email address, just however this person can contact you. Next is going to be your education. So you're going to list all of your university education, most recent first if you have multiple schools that you've gone to. So for this, you're going to include the name of the school, the degree you've obtained, the date that you attended the school, or your expected graduation date if you're in your final year. And then this section, you can also include honors or independent studies if you've done one. And there you would include a summary of your research, your supervisor's name and department, and the name and course number of the thesis or independent study. So that's kind of your opportunity to show that you have done independent research and that you're ready to continue to do it at a master's level or another level if that may be the case. So next is teaching experience and interest, which is something new that's not on a resume. And we're actually very lucky at Mount Allison because not many undergraduate students do have the opportunity to gain teaching experience. But given that Mount employs so many teaching assistants, some people may have this to put on their academic CV. So if so, you might include the title, which is probably going to be teaching assistant, but it could be something different. Your professor's name, the course name and number that you were TAing, the semesters or dates employed. So maybe it was the full year or maybe it was just for half a semester. So that's where you'd include that. And a summary of your responsibilities. So what you were doing for them. So TAing could be teaching courses to a class, or it could be grading. It could be meeting with students one-on-one. So describe your responsibilities here. Another experience that you may have gained in your undergraduate, but it's kind of unlikely, is a guest lecture. And in this case, you'd include the same information as a TA, but rather than describing responsibilities, you would include a short summary of the lecture that you gave. And then teaching interests is another opportunity to talk more about your personal interests that you don't normally have. So this is where you'll use small bullet points or sentences, and you're going to describe your personal teaching interests. And this is a really important section to consider, because if you are given the opportunity to do a TA-ship and you are given a course to teach that you've never really studied before, you might be really challenged. So in that case, that's why you want to describe teaching interests. You might want to pick things that you're familiar with or comfortable with, but it is okay to challenge yourself as well. So next, research experience and interests are very similar. We're lucky that we have lots of opportunities for research assistantships at Mount Allison. So very similar, you describe the job title, who supervised you, the professor's name, the date employed, the department that it was part of, and a summary of your responsibilities. Pretty straightforward. Research interests are going to be, again, very similar to teaching interests, except in this case, you're describing what you want to research rather than to teach. So if a professor offers you a research assistantship, you want to make sure that you are telling them subjects that you truly are interested in researching, because it's going to be pretty tricky, and you don't want to give yourself more work than you need to. But it is okay to challenge yourself again. So think about that pretty long and hard. I think that's a good section to think about. Next is going to be professional experience. This is going to be a section used to describe academic related paid experience. So this might be an internship, for example, where you'd include the job title, the employer name and supervisor name if you have one, and the dates employed, as well as a summary of your responsibilities. So again, that's academic related paid experience. And that's why it's bolded, because it is different than some of the following sections. So additional work experience is different. This section is going to be used for your non-academic related paid experience. So it is paid again, but it isn't academic related. And this could be your summer job at a grocery store. It could be any job you've had that isn't related to what you're applying for or your academics. And that just kind of shows your drive to work and your ability to work. So next is going to be volunteer experience and extracurriculars. This is pretty straightforward. You're going to describe any volunteer experience or extracurriculars you engage in, including activity or events, the dates, the summary of the activity, and this section is going to look very different depending what you've done, but that might look like a society member where you're going to want to tell them what your responsibilities were, versus if you took art classes, there's not a lot to describe about that, but you could say the dates that you attended and that it was something you just did in your free time out of interest. It kind of shows personality within your academic CV. Not always super academic related, but it is an important section to have. Next, the next few sections are going to be kind of iffy depending on the experience that you have. So not everybody in their undergraduate degree has attended conferences, and that's totally fine. If not, you just skip over this section. But if you have, you can include them in 3 different ways. So you've either presented at one, attended one, or planned one. There are sometimes instances where people have contributed in a project but weren't there to present it. In that case, you could put contributed rather than presented, attended, or planned. So that would be kind of like if you contributed to a poster project but you weren't there while the rest of your team presented it, but you were credited for it. That would be a situation where you would put contributed. For this section, you put the title of the conference, the date, and the summary of your research if you were doing a presentation. The next section also is iffy. Languages. Some programs require various language requirements, some don't. But if you do have multiple experience in multiple languages, it doesn't hurt to add this. So you're going to list any languages that you have any level of experience with. So that could be your first language, second language, a university level language, for example, a Spanish course, a certified language like the DELF French English test, etc. So really, you just want to include the language, your proficiency in reading, writing, and speaking, a course name and number if it was a course, or how many years you studied or spoken it. It depends on your experience, and use that to help you create your language section if you want to include one. And then finally, there's awards and achievements. Here you're going to list all awards, achievements, certifications, acknowledgements, honors, and funding you've received. You're just going to include the date, the name or title, the dollar amount, and any other relevant information. So this is just a point to show some accomplishments. And then the skills section is something I wanted to do a little bit separately because I think this covers a huge amount of possibilities. So to keep them concise and neat, what I do and what I think a lot of people can do in a cover letter, I think what a lot of people can do in their academic CV is break down their skills into different sections. And so for what I did in this example is digital skills, field and research skills, and personal. So this kind of helps you make a more neat academic CV where you don't have a 30 bullet point section of skills that you have, because you probably do have a lot of skills, but there's just different ways of incorporating them. So a digital skill can be anything, including social media, Excel, Photoshop, to research engines. And to help you think about this, you might not realize how many digital skills you have, but think about how many sources you use online alone just to write a paper. So you might use Google Scholar, JSTOR, WorldCat, anything like that. Those are all different digital skills that you have. So think like that. For field and research skills, this is really flexible depending on your discipline, what you're applying for. So for example, a science student might have various lab skills that they want to include in here, whereas business students could discuss their experience in case competitions or case studies. And an art student might have field experience or have learned how to do certain testing that they want to highlight in academic CV. So it really just depends on what your discipline is. And then finally, personal is a good section to have where you're just going to talk about personal skills. So maybe things that you've gained from previous jobs that you think are important. So that could be adaptability, punctuality, ability to work as a team or as an individual. It really is totally up to you what you want to put here. And these are just a few examples, but there are, and you can use any option you want for the skill section as long as it makes sense and it's keeping your academic CV clear and concise. And then finally, I want to highlight something really important, and these are power words. So these words make your academic CV stronger. They're important to include as often as possible without overloading it. But they create a more powerful statement about what you can do, what you have done, what your experience is like. So look at words like this before you create your descriptions of jobs or your skills even, and see, like, did I demonstrate something in a previous job? Yes. Well, I'll include that now. Maybe you established something and you didn't realize it until you looked at this resume action word chart. So this is definitely something that I would recommend looking into while you're working on your academic CV, to put some powerful words in there and strengthen up that application. And that's it. So thank you for watching. Please check out our other videos. We have professional cover letters, professional resumes, how to make a LinkedIn profile, interview skills, and working from home. Thanks. Bye-bye.